For our first session, we're going to be joined by George and Colin, co-directors of the Nano Foundation. Nano claims to be the world's most efficient decentralized currency. That's a big claim. Using its own blockchain. They've got zero fees, no crypto mining required. No crypto mining. That isn't awesome, isn't it? That does sound amazing. So George and Colin are going to give us an overview of Web3 and then dive into some of the details and look at why it's important. And I think they might be a bit controversial, but over to you guys. Come up, give them a round of applause.
Right. Hello, everybody. Right. So this is a little bit wobbly, so do bear with us if it does collapse. That would be fine. Righty-ho. Cool. So, hello. I am George Coxon, and this is Colin Lemahieu. As Reid so wonderfully said, we are both directors of the Nano Foundation, with Colin being the founder of Nano itself. So currently, Nano is the world's most efficient decentralized currency, and we'll be going through that a little bit more in our presentation today. But really, our concepts that we're going to be discussing are, will blockchain, crypto, and Web3 be the change? Well, you may be a little bit surprised by our upcoming thoughts on this. And due to the topics being so large, with only 25 minutes to talk, we are going to be slightly brief with a highlighting overview of our opinions, with decentralization being a theme throughout all these concepts. So let's dive in.
Perfect. I'll go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about. We'll start off with talking about a few of the buzzwords that are in the industry. And we'll go over a few of the definitions, just at a high level, on what they're trying to solve. In the middle, we'll look at what they're trying to solve, how effective they are at these things, and what the projections are for the future of those. And then finally, we'll end up talking a little bit about what we do at Nano Foundation, what is our goal in this whole industry, and what are we aiming for.
Exactly. So, to kick us off, we're going to play a game of buzzword bingo. Who doesn't love a buzzword? Well, us, actually. I mean, introducing you to blockchain's second biggest export, which are buzzwords, after, I think, conferences, which are probably the #1 export of blockchain over the last couple of years. But obviously, we've got a lot of buzzwords here. However, we are only joking. We're not going to play a game here. I think it is important to really hammer in the speculative space that we are currently in this realm. And in this speculative space, there is a full array of unbanked lexicons used as funding magnets. And we feel it's important to dig a little bit deeper into the concepts behind such buzzwords and reveal if they are idealistic or realistic to the world we live in today. So, Colin, what do buzzwords even mean?
We'll go over a few of these. We'll start right at the top with blockchain or crypto. These are really just generic terms for a variety of technologies made by a lot of people with a focus on decentralization, data immutability, and consensus. So we could start off with there. We'll move on to ICO. This may sound very similar to IPO, and they are very similar. It is a type of security or fundraising mechanism, but these are largely unregistered, as you probably know. Unregistered, unregulated,
yes.
As the case may be. So we'll move on to the next one. It's an acronym of, or a conjunction of DeFi, Decentralized Finance. So this is the idea of replacing our existing financial tools, either investments or banking, with decentralized alternatives. Then we'll move on to NFTs. So NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token. Who here knows what fungibility is? A little bit, okay, got some. So fungibility is the interchangeability of something with something very identical. So an example would be a 10-pound note. It doesn't matter whether it's mine or another one. They're all effectively the same thing. They're interchangeable. So non-fungible is the exact opposite, and that's usually applied to, well, they're trying to apply it to artwork and type of things, formerly known as JPEGs. And then finally, we'll hit Web3, which is in a similar way to DeFi, replacing our existing infrastructure with decentralized alternatives, but this is focusing on the web infrastructure itself, attempting to replace it with decentralized alternatives.
I think attempting being a very strong word.
Yeah. So, as George said earlier, what underpins a lot of these things as opposed to traditional technologies is simply the focus on decentralization. So we should really figure out what that term means. So decentralization is a form of redundancy. So just as the same way as companies have redundancy in their infrastructure, perhaps a database, if one fails, another one takes over. Decentralization, as it is in the crypto space, is decentralization effectively of administration of the system. So there is no single actor or single player that is the administrator and can change the rules unilaterally.
An example kind of touted by Web3 is a new uncensored version of Twitter where tweets cannot be moderated or deleted by Twitter. And I think I can ask you that, does anyone actually want that? My personal story as a female leader within the crypto space, and I have harassment thrown at me online on a weekly basis, whether that is an auction on who gets to rape me first, and yes, that is real and online, and I have no power to remove it, or misogynistic abuse. I, for one, believe that we are responsible to create a safe space online for everyone. And that is not reached through decentralizing such platforms, in my opinion. There must be accountability online. I think 4chan, a platform that some of you may know, and I'm sorry if you do, is a great example of an unmoderated social platform known to refuse to remove child pornography and be the birthplace of the incel culture we see rising among so many young men who spend a lot of time online. So who does this benefit decentralizing social platforms and the wider web?
So the question is, when is decentralization useful? Well, far fewer than one might think. Obviously, at Nano, we're focused on decentralization of currency. We think that that's one of the very few actual use cases for decentralization that's effective and desirable. And it may sound good to have a single source of truth. You just connect to a network and you can get either a truth of ownership of property or get this data. It sounds very good, but it does break down when interfacing with the real world. So just a couple of the problems that you can run into. What if a transfer has failed to be recorded on the network? What if the owner's encryption keys are lost? Or what if there's judicial intervention that reassigns ownership of property? Then you have a persistent, immutable ledger that is incorrect. So those type of things need to be thought about when seeing it's useful. So we, George and I, call our industry an industry of solutions looking for a problem. And these are a lot of the things that have been touted over the years. We've been to several conferences before we decided that was not where we wanted to go. But these were the technologies that they talked about. So supply chain tracking, healthcare data storage, uncensorable Twitter, programmable money. All of these things, there can be advantages and improvements to be made in this, but often they're touted as turnkey solutions to this. And not only, in our opinion, do they not always fully solve the problem, but they introduce a number of other problems that need further solutions in order to solve.
And I think one of our favorite things at the conference was we saw a talk on veganism on the blockchain, which was quite baffling, to say the least.
Farm to fork is a very good... yes, okay, so why do these solutions tend to run into problems? So the elephant in the room when it comes to blockchain and decentralization is simply scaling. Can they compete economically with what we have currently? So high performance computing centers around the concept of divide and conquer. Divide and conquer, asynchronous operation, horizontal scaling. And blockchains simply start out at the very fundamental level slower than their traditional counterparts. They have limited asynchronicity and almost no ability to horizontally scale. So right out of the gate, blockchains start performance bottlenecked, and that results in very low usage numbers. I think what was...
Yeah, so I think the numbers as they say now are cryptocurrency takes up less than 1% of the global economy, yet I'm sure you will see it all over the media, making it a lot larger than it actually is when it comes to real world use.
So this is a little, bit of a breakdown of the categories of things people have tried to solve, and ours is right in the middle. But we'll start at the left, smart contract execution. That's a type of programmable money. Pretty much you can execute programs inside of these platforms. Moving on, you have data immutability. Like I said before, these platforms you can typically only add data to. You typically cannot delete data from them. So they use that property of data immutability in their technologies. There's currency, which is what we're focused on, cryptocurrency. Again, we think that that's one actually good use of decentralization. Naming systems, things like DNS and that like, so they're trying to make decentralized counterparts to that. And then NFTs, obviously. The well-touted, we have a picture of a typical NFT purchaser over there on the right, so.
So obviously, currency, as Colin said, is our focus, and we believe that currency really is actually the only tangible application of blockchain in the real world currently. And so what we're going to go through now is kind of the concept of digital money, the pillars that create digital money, and why we believe, obviously slightly biased, that Nano is digital money and digital cash. That is our goal. So simply put, we built Nano to simply be the most efficient currency the world has ever seen, from the horse's mouth right here. Now, we believe there are 4 main pillars to create a true digital currency. What is the perfect money? So number 1 is transaction capacity. Number 2, speed to finality. Number 3, decentralization, our kind of core theme in our presentation today. And number 4, low fees and a low cost to operate. Now, we're seeing a lot in the space where some assets and some tokens and coins are hitting a few of those, but to get the perfect 4 is really the ideal that we are working towards. So as decentralization, obviously, we haven't picked here, sorry. A bit behind. So as decentralization is obviously kind of a key importance across these new facets and new technologies, Web3, blockchain, cryptocurrency. So where is decentralization important? And we really believe it is important within currency itself. So within cryptocurrency, decentralization is quantified through what we call the Nakamoto Coefficient. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Bitcoin being touted as the most decentralized money that we can ever have. Well, I'm afraid it actually isn't. So the Nakamoto Coefficient, the number is that it's the amount of entities, whether that's mining farms, whether that's institutions, that could collude to potentially shut down a network. Now, Bitcoin is 4. It only will take 4 entities or 4 mining farms to come together and take down the network. We're pleased to say that Nano has a decentralization of 11, a Nakamoto Coefficient of 11. So we really believe that for a global digital currency, it must be resistant to both failure and attack. Now, a good real-world story of the problems of a centralized currency. So what happened in India in 2016, where the government decided to take 2 notes and the 2 highest denomination notes out of the rupee system, which equated to 86% of the country's cash supply. Now, they gave 4 hours notice for this change to happen to combat corruption, and another 50 days after that to transfer your notes. I know we've all changed our pound coins. I think I've got a pot of old pound coins still at home somewhere. However, in this regard, who this really affected were people in rural situations, the poorest of the country, and those with a lack of access to the infrastructure that we so take for granted anyway, and especially women. And there is a real issue when it comes to a centralized or political party, we feel, in deciding a monetary policy to this extent, which doesn't look to the most vulnerable of its population. And that's why we think that decentralization of a currency is incredibly important. So, as we said earlier, we really believe that Nano could really be a global digital cash alternative, nothing more and nothing less. We've designed it to allow you to keep more of your money, so Nano is completely feeless. Our competitors are the Western Unions of this world, where if you work in service in Hong Kong and you want to send your money back to your family in the Philippines, you are sometimes paying 20% for the right to send your money. We do not believe that is fair. Only one person wins out of that, and it's not the person who owns that money. There is an issue here. So, why, talking about cash, why do we think that Nano is better than the cash in your pocket? Well, it's your money. And this kind of does speak for a lot of other cryptocurrencies as well. And we will see the delineation further on. But it is your money, it's not the government's. It is private, secure, and tamper-proof. And you are in control of when you send and spend your own money. I think we've all seen with COVID and the restriction of access to the banking infrastructure or timings of FX trades, there is an issue when it comes to restriction of access. It's inflation resistant, so Nano has been designed to protect its own value. It is a fully a distributed currency. There are 133 million nano out in the world. But actually, what's hidden are it's times 10 to the 30. There are 30 zeros behind that. And also, it's all in your pocket. All you need is a smartphone and Wi-Fi access. And so that's why we focus on emerging economies especially. There are 1.7 billion people in the world that do not have an address, and therefore cannot access the banking system that we in the Western world take so for granted. And we really believe that a digital currency, whether it's nano or something that comes along that's better, we will join them because we really believe this is needed. So why is nano better than banking institutions? Well, there is no hidden fees, number one. I think we've all been taken aside by a hidden fee at some point in our lives. So 100% of the value is transferred directly to the recipient. It is also lightning fast, so you can send money in 0.2 seconds on average around the world for free. And also it's owned by everyone, decentralized and democratized. It is inflation and manipulation resistant by design. And last but not least, why is Nano different from cryptocurrency? We're actually trying to remove ourselves from the cryptocurrency space, because we are a non-profit organization, which is possibly a unicorn in the cryptocurrency space. We are not backed by greed. We really believe in empowering equal economic opportunity for the wider world, and Nano is our first gift to the world in that realm. Nano is also a currency and not an asset, and I think the majority of the crypto space is all around trading assets and tokens. We are focusing on sending, spending, and accepting Nano in real time versus buying, holding, and selling on market valuation. And most importantly, it is environmentally friendly. Nano does not rely on mining or other energy-intensive activities to hold its value, as we will go through in a second here.
Yep. So the focus on energy efficiency was one of the primary design goals. We think that you can't have this new technology, which is purported to be the future of finance, while it's also consuming exorbitant amounts of energy. And this graph here we put together, or infographic, in order to exemplify that. So on the left, you see one dot, which represents not just one nano transaction, it represents 12,500 nano transactions. And on the right-hand side, you can see an equivalent with a Bitcoin transaction. So from an energy consumption standpoint, one Bitcoin transaction is roughly equivalent to 15.5 million nano transactions. So one nano transaction is 1/1000th of a kilowatt hour, and Bitcoin takes around 1,700 kilowatt hours per transaction.
And we really believe we are in a climate crisis right now. This is not a dystopian future. We are in this crisis right now, and we must have accountability for the technologies we are using and putting forward, and take off our rose-tinted investment spectacles and actually look to the future of these technologies. So as we kind of said earlier, Nano, we are trying to be a global currency. And so just as a currency kind of, in the real world, like the euro, dollar, pound, yen, we spent 2 years researching, creating our own currency symbol, which we're incredibly proud to present. You can see it in the middle here. So just as a currency sign kind of aims to place Nano in the real world requires conformity to the global standardizations following requirements set by the International Organization of Standardization, ISO. So Nano is what is considered to be a supranational currency with no official currency code, and therefore must begin with an X, as per the requirement standards for business and banking globally by ISO 4217. And so we're pretty proud of this. Having taken the X, it means that any other supranational currency cannot use an X as their currency symbol. So X really does mark the spot, and we hope that you'll be seeing and paying with Nano in the future, very near future. So one of the most kind of important and wonderful factors of what we do is our community. So Nano is often known as having the second most active community after Bitcoin, and that is truly down to its ethos of what it could bring to the world, this tangible change of banking and finance accessibility. And this is just a lovely picture of, we especially work in emerging economies. As I said earlier, there's 1.7 billion people in the world that do not have an address and therefore cannot access the banking system we take for granted. And so we have burgeoning communities, especially in Nigeria, West Africa, and further afield. And this was a wonderful meetup that took place not too long ago, and they actually all screen printed their own Nano t-shirts, which was really cool. And then last but not least, just a little bit around the Nano Foundation. So we believe that changing the world is no small feat, but that is our goal, and we aim to do it one transaction at a time. We really believe in empowering people and businesses with education, advice, opportunities, and most importantly, a digital currency resilient to manipulation, fees, and complexity of traditional currencies traded the world over. Can you do that?
Oh, yes. No, I lost my...
You're doing the same.
Oh, yes. So the Nano Foundation is committed to equal economic opportunity and believes that a currency should be spent, sent, and accepted. And we believe that that is the first step moving forward.
So as you can kind of see, I know that we have spoken a little bit about nano at the end, but in our minds, we truly believe that out of all of these buzzwords, we think and truly believe that currency is really the only tangible working application of these technologies right now. A lot of our world is hot air, whether that's Web3 and various others, and decentralization obviously being the theme throughout all of them, knitting them all together. Is it realistic or is it idealistic? And are they actually, is decentralization benefiting all of us? Sometimes yes and sometimes no. And that really is it. So as I said, a very brief overview of our feelings on Web3, crypto, and blockchain. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, guys.